G'day everyone, Chris here from Our Wandering Adventures. Today I wanted to do a quick little video. You can hear it's raining outside, so we're not able to do a lot in the actual van today. But I wanted to do a video to talk to you about the reasons why we chose this particular van. So for those of you that don't know, we ended up selecting a Mercedes Sprinter 519, 516. I'll put the details of it up on the actual video here just below for you in a moment. But we basically selected the Mercedes Sprinter 516 CDI, I think it is. And there was a couple of reasons why we chose that. Firstly, we absolutely love the Sprinter because it's a very reliable car. So I think firstly for us it was about reliability, because from our perspective the budget meant that we couldn't buy a new van, and most of the existing vans that are out there at the moment with the sorts of kilometres that we were probably looking to go for, really at that 200,000 K mark there were some challenges about reliability. Now I'm not saying that these vans wouldn't be reliable at these sorts of kilometres, but this particular van we selected, so it's a 2015 model, we had to go for one that had 200,000 Ks. Now, if you're looking at some of the ones we were looking at were the Deliver 9, that was one of them. We also looked at the Ford Transit, and I think there were a couple of others in there, but they were kind of like our main ones. Now, from our perspective, the challenge at 200,000 Ks is that's really a lot of kilometres. We also looked at the Toyota Coaster. The thing with the Toyota Coaster, it's got the 1HZ motor in it, and you can basically put 400,000 or 500,000 K on it and not really be concerned. So I mean, we were looking at, again, that really for the same budget, which we spent around that 30 grand mark, that same budget you're looking at a coaster that's probably 30 to 35 years old. So we had a challenge there when it came to the coaster, which I'll talk to you about in a moment in terms of the serviceability if you're going to get a loan or something along those lines. But for us, the reason why we picked the Sprinter was because from a reliability perspective, you should be able to put 300 plus thousand kilometres on a Sprinter with no real concern. So we still took a little bit of a gamble. We ended up picking an X fleet model, so obviously you can see that this particular van is blue. It was an X Star Trek van, and we just knew that by selecting a leased van, we knew that they're typically better looked after, and of course everything is a risk, but for us we knew that it was a fairly calculated risk. So from us, reliability was probably the number one thing. Number two from our perspective was serviceability of the value of it. So we didn't have the cash to buy everything out front, so we needed to have a loan, and the challenge with that is if you've got something that's 25, 30 years old, it's probably not going to value up if you are to go get a loan for it. So our first pick was probably the Toyota Coaster. I'm really glad though we didn't end up picking it, because the budget really only allowed for us to get probably a mid to late 90s bus, and I mean that's like a 35 year old bus. It's not, the motor's fine, but some of the other challenges we were really worried about were the drive chain. A lot of those older ones didn't have aircon, although we're not necessarily concerned about aircon for the rest of the van. We definitely wanted it for the front. So yeah, that was probably an important second point for us, was the serviceability and age, just really for the budget that we got, was a big one. The third thing was that it's one of the few vans that has the super long wheelbase and high roof for myself. There is one other van which we looked at it that, and I'll think of it in a moment, that does have this length, but most of them, the challenge is, and if you can see this, I've got a bit of headroom there. Some of that will be taken up when we put in the floor and the ceiling, but we probably come to being pretty close on for me, and I'm about 182, 183 centimeters, so I'm sort of like 6'1", and it wasn't really going to work for us. We had to have a high roof, so that was important. The other thing with the long wheelbase was that it's around 6.9 meters, so there's not a lot really that had the height and that length. And the reason why those two things are important for us is because when you talk cubic meters of storage and you start putting in, a bed in the back, cupboards down the side, a shower that might be somewhere in here, then you run out of room pretty quickly. And so we knew that we definitely wanted, those metrics. And for us, that meant the Deliver 9, as I said, the Coaster, the other van, which I can't think of the name of, but I'll put it up on the screen as well. And of course, the Mercedes Sprinter. Next thing, the reason why we chose this particular Mercedes Sprinter, so this is, as I said before, it's a 5 Series. And a super important reason why we chose the 5 Series is because it has a higher GVM. Now, most of these vans getting around, and you can check this yourself, most of these vans getting around have a 3.5 ton GVM, which, in principle sounds okay. I mean, the dry weight of most of these, or the curb weight of most of these vans, is about that 2.2 to 2.4 ton. And, with a GVM of 3.5, you got a little bit to play with. The problem is this, right? You chuck in a couple of people, between my wife and I, in terms of weight, that's an extra 160, 170 kilos. You chuck in water tanks, so curb weight typically is a full tank of fuel, but if you have a couple of, say, 100 litre fuel tanks and you chuck the 2 people in, well, there's 350, 400 kilos. You really only have 600 or 700 kilos to basically build to be under your GVM. So what we did with the 5 Series was we picked a van that had, because the 5 Series has 2 options depending on the model, and you've got to be really cautious about this when buying. You can check it on, really the only guaranteed way is to check it on the compliance plate. This has a 4.5 ton GVM, and there is a 5 ton GVM option as well. Now, you'd think, well, why wouldn't I go for the 5 ton GVM? The reason is because you have to have a light rigid license. Now, again, probably not a big deal, but you then move into the heavy vehicle territory where you do have a different cost on licensing, registration. Registration. You can potentially be pulled into the heavy vehicle lane for inspections, all that sort of stuff. And I mean, if you don't mind that, go for your life. It'll give you an extra 500 kilos of GVM. But for us, 4.5 ton meant that if we follow that same maths before, we can now have an extra ton really to play around with. So if we want to bring weights, if we want to have, say, an extra grey water, probably won't have black water. I mean, if you have a toilet, that's sort of self-contained. But if you just start adding in those weights, it does come together pretty quickly, especially because for us, this is actually going to be our house. We're not necessarily just looking at weekends. So when you start adding in the weight of the actual benches, the weight of the bed, the weight of the water tanks, the weight of the shower, and of course the weight of your actual belongings, it starts that up pretty quickly. So for us, I guess from the top, as I said, the first thing was reliability. The second thing really was that sort of serviceability and price. The third thing was that this came in the dimensions that we wanted, plus it had the ability for us to have the GVM options. The next thing we also looked at fairly heavily was the fuel efficiency. Now, if pound for pound had worked the way that we wanted to, we probably would have bought a Toyota Coaster. This might not sound like a big thing, but fully laden, we're seeing a lot of people talking about a fuel efficiency of somewhere around that kind of 14 to 15 litre hundreds. Now again, look, everyone drives differently. I'm not here to say that that's guaranteed to be the efficiency, but if you compare that with something like this, I think we will probably be 2 or 3 litre hundreds lower, because what we found driving back from Sydney, and we definitely had it on the highway running, 110, 115, is that with the door and us and emptily laden, we were getting about 9.5 to, probably 9.5 litre hundreds. So we think that fully laden, we might get somewhere between 11 to 12, and obviously once we start travelling, we'll probably drop that speed down. We'll be cruising a lot more. So if we could get 11.5 to 12 litre hundreds, when you then add in the big lap and you're adding in 25, 30,000 kilometres, it really does make a difference to the hip pocket, quite frankly. The other thing, which was a really big one for us, and most of the modern vans have this, but it was a very big difference with the Toyota Coaster, was that a lot of those vans at that age were manual, which is fine. I mean, both Talia and I can drive the manual, but it's just one less thing for you to have to worry about when you are navigating and you've got a whole bus full of belongings, is to just think about that transmission. So for us, having an auto transmission was and is pretty important. It's just one less thing for us to worry about. And the other thing which I think is really, going to be a game changer for us is that, as you can see with this front sort of section, we've taken this door out, but what we'll have is we'll actually have a curtain that comes across. So what that means is, although we won't have the aircon for the rest of this, and I'll talk about that in a second, we'll actually have, the aircon runs quite well here, and if we have a curtain there, then what that'll end up doing is it'll give us aircon when we are travelling. So we saw a really cool Toyota Coaster, and again, we almost purchased it. The valuation didn't stack up. But one of the things that was going to be a challenge for me was that it had aircon, but it was disconnected. And when you're travelling throughout the middle of the day, that was going to be a bit of a game changer for us. So when we're running aircon in this and getting 9.5 to 10 litre, or 9 to 9.5 litre hundreds empty, and that translates to 11 or 12, we definitely want to have the the air conditioning. Now, in another episode, I'll talk about what our design's going to be, because we really went through that whole, do we have aircon in the back, do we not? We've seen a number of different vans with a number of different styles. We think that if we have a couple of different fans, so one to blow in and the other to suck out in the roof, and having the doors with mesh openable, because you can actually open that, folds all the way around, it clips on a magnet, plus this door here opened with the fly screens, we'll actually have a lot of moving air in here. And we've stayed in a lot of places in our current full drive, which is a GWM ute with a rooftop camp, and as long as you've got that fresh breeze in the evenings and a fan, you can get away with it. Now, to be honest, during the day, we're probably not going to be in here. We'll have the side awning out and we'll actually be outside, and I'd then like to be able to have a quick setup for mozzie netting, because what we've found travelling is daytimes are fine. Like, you're not inside, generally speaking, although we do have these options. And if we're staying at a caravan park, which hopefully will be less often than more often, then we'll probably take a portable air conditioner. We have a portable air conditioner with us, but certainly not going to have an air conditioner that runs via an inverter, and then we have to have the solar and a battery to pick it up, because it's just not efficient. And you could do it, but your batteries would basically spend, even if you have 400 to 600 amp hours, they'd spend all day charging just to run your aircon. And I think that's a personal choice, of course, but we figured that, even though once we put the roofing and so forth in, that it might be a bit of a mission to go back and change that. I don't think it's going to be that huge, because the idea with us is that we're going to set it up so that it is fairly minimalistic. We don't want to have 10 layers. We will have the sound deadening, the insulation, so, and then of course the actual roofing, but it's not going to be the end of the world if we have to go back and add an aircon, which I can't seriously see us doing it, because the plan is that we'll actually travel south in the warmer months, because we've done a bit of south driving, and it's certainly the breezes off the southern sea make it a lot cooler down there in the warmer months. Forget the inland stuff. We'll probably try to stay away from any hot inland places when it's summer. And in the winter, we'll go north. So we did Darwin last year, September, and overnight it was fine. I mean, there was one night which was 27 degrees overnight, but if we had a fan, no worries at all. So that kind of wraps up this particular episode. I just wanted to get on here and talk to you about the reasons why we chose the Mercedes Sprinter, and in particular why we chose the 5 Series, because we know that when we were looking, and we spent probably the last 2 years, we consumed a lot of these episodes because we really wanted to understand why people made the choices that they did. So really hope you've enjoyed this video. If you see value in this channel, please like and subscribe. In our next video, I'm going to talk you through the plans that we've got in here, and then for following videos you'll start to see them moving forward. So look forward to seeing you on our next episodes.